Nikaj here. I'm off this week to speak at the New Orleans Investment Conference. I'll give a talk to the entire conference in the main hall, and then I'll be on the precious metals panel, and we'll have a breakout session with Gerardo where we'll talk about green metals inflating, not only because of monetary pricing pressures, but because of the demand from the money being put into fighting global climate change. And so it's going to be very exciting. I wanted to give you a little preview or outline of one of the talks I'm going to give because it, of course, is in line with all the things that Gerardo and I write to you about on a daily basis here. And so obviously one of the big themes of the conference is going to be inflation. And so let's start there quickly because the mainstream media has now waved the white flag on inflation. Bloomberg had an article out last week saying that basically we admit that we were wrong. I view them as speaking for the entire mainstream media and financial services industry. And so they were saying, we got it wrong on inflation. We've been saying it was transitory, and it turns out, guess what? It's not. And so Gerardo and I and others who will be presenting at the conference have told you that as well, going back as far as last year, that inflation was manifesting in a real way. And then when the transitory buzzword started earlier in 2021, said that, that's absolute bullshit. It already hasn't been transitory, and so it can't be. And it's not going to be because it isn't. And so where has inflation manifested? Well, all over the place. And so I guess let's put a pin in gold over here because gold went to all-time highs last year. It sort of front ran the inflation. And so if you think about things like the Cantillon effect or the Cantillon effect, where which was posited over 200 years ago and talks about how money is distributed once it comes from the king. It's sort of like honey. It comes down and it goes right in the center, closest to the king, and it distributes out slowly because it's thick, right? And it takes time to go out. So those who are closest to the king get the most. Sound familiar? And those furthest away from the king get the least, and not in time to catch up with the inflation that's already manifested in assets. And so I bring that up to modern day, and you're talking about the asset prices going up faster than wages are rising, even though you're now seeing wages starting to rise, right? The honey's starting to go to the edge of the dish, and the money starting to trickle out that we've put into the system over the past, frankly, decade. And so gold front ran that, and now it's manifesting in all sorts of places. And my cute name for that is whack-a-mole inflation. I've seen a lot of people developing names for this idea or thesis that inflation is popping up in all sorts of places, and you've seen it in all sorts of commodities because the commodity index continues to hit all-time highs, and that includes things you eat and things that power your car. So, corn, coffee, cocoa, gas, etc. And then, all the battery metals are going up as well, things that even aren't in that index, rare earths, for example, and obviously uranium, which I have a new presentation out on just this week that you should watch as well. And so now that the mainstream media has admitted defeat on inflation, has called it not transitory, I guess the question is, what next? How do you continue to front run the mainstream? And so one of their developing narratives is stagflation, or this idea that, we might not get growth commensurate with inflation. And I think that, my talk would focus on the idea that at least for the next couple of quarters, growth is going to be enough to propel assets higher, to propel commodities higher, to propel stocks higher, and of course, for bond yields to go higher, which have already gone up 100% in the year, sort of the prime driver of this inflation, right? Or the main thing to point to, the U.S. 10-year yield. And so that's sort of what I'm going to get into in my talks in New Orleans, uh, which moles to whack next as far as whack-a-mole. And I think it's almost all of them, especially uranium and the commodities that have fundamentals driving them, not just the inflation narrative driving them. And so I would encourage you to watch my new presentation about uranium as just one of the commodities that is going to rise in price with that real energy fundamental demand behind it. And I hope to catch up with you again before the week is out, even though it'll be coming from New Orleans.